welcome back to Crime on the Clarkfork, the true crime podcast where I tell you about big crimes that happen in small places, with each case having occurred in areas with populations of 15,000 or less. My name is Mackenzie Spence, and I'm your host, and if this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you are back for another episode and have listened before, I'm glad you're back, and I appreciate you sticking with me while I took a little bit of a break for November and December, I believe. So I did have a lot going on these last couple of months. I just finished my first semester of my doctoral program, so that was absolutely insane. I was also working full-time and part-time and teaching part-time, so I had 5 different jobs happening all at the same time, and this kind of went on the back burner, but I am back, and you should be happy to know that I already have cases picked out for February and March that I am currently working on, researching and getting recorded, so I am hoping that I won't have another break in there, and I'm really going to try and get ahead of some of the research because that's what takes so long for every episode. Now, with that being said, I'm just going to hop right into the episode. Today we are heading back to the United States, and I want to start covering some cases in states where I haven't had a listener yet. So today we are going to New Mexico. The sources for this episode are census.gov, Justia, Murderpedia, Deseret News, Rio Grande Sun, Serial Killer Calendar, KOAT7, KRQE News, The Washington Post, and newspapers.com. Chimayo, New Mexico, 1991. Population 2,789. On January 26, 1991, Ricky Abeyta went on a killing spree and murdered 7 people. His estranged girlfriend, Ignacita Vasquez Sandoval, her sister Selena, Ignacita's daughter, Mary Ellen, Mary Ellen's boyfriend, Marcario Gonzalez, Mary Ellen and Marcario's 6-month-old son, and 2 police officers, 30-year-old Sheriff's Deputy Jerry Martinez and 35-year-old State Police Sergeant Glenn Huber. He also shot Ignacita's son, Eloy, who was not killed by the gunshot wound. Chimayo is a small town in north-central New Mexico, approximately an hour north of Albuquerque. It is located in the Sangre de Cristo foothills and known for the El Santuario de Chimayo Church, which is visited by thousands of faithful Catholics each year to pray and be healed. It is said that the dirt from a hole in the floor of the church has miraculous healing and curing powers. The town is also known for its red chili peppers that the local farmers grow. Ignacita and Abeyta had lived with each other for approximately 2 years. Ignacita's children, 14-year-old Eloy and 19-year-old Mary Ellen, Mary Ellen's boyfriend, 21-year-old Marcario, and their 6-month-old son, Justin, and Ignacita's 16-year-old sister, Selena, all lived in the residence with Ignacita and Abeyta at some point. Now, just to give you the names again on who had lived there, so it was Ignacita, Abeyta, Eloy, Mary Ellen, Marcario, Justin, and Selena. So that's 7 people total. On Wednesday, January 23rd, Ignacita decided that it was time she left Abeyta and moved out of the house after the two got into a fight and he shot at her and her car 3 times. Prior to this, Ignacita and Abeyta had split 3 separate times. Each time, she moved out of the trailer house to only move back in at a later date when the two got back together. Abeyta was known as a skilled hunter by his neighbors and worked as a welder. Throughout his life, he was no stranger to the law as he was arrested in multiple times over the course of his life, but he was never convicted for any of the crimes that he was arrested for. Some of the charges that he had been arrested for included aggravated assault, larceny, and harassment by telephone. But even so, his family members hold steady that he was an even-tempered man who was rather quiet. On the morning of January 26, 1991, Abeyta left his home and locked the house and the gate behind him. He says that when Ignacita had moved out in the past, she not only took her possessions, but she also took most of his as well. Since he was expecting that she would do the same thing when she was leaving this time, he made sure to lock up the house on his way out to work in Santa Fe. After Ignacita was sure that Abeda would be gone, herself, Mary Ellen, Selena, Macario, Cheryl, who was Ignacita's 25-year-old sister, and then Cheryl's 2 young children, Roland and Nikki, arrived at the residence to remove Ignacita and her family's possessions. With them was also a man named Peter Martinez, and he was there helping the family load everything onto their rented U-Haul truck because he had met Ignacita that morning in Chimayo, and she had hired him to help out. On top of the people helping with the move, Ignacita had gone to the police for police protection while she moved because she was afraid that if Abeda arrived while they were moving out, he would become violent. Jerry Martinez, the Rio Arriba County Deputy Sheriff, was at the property to supervise Ignacita and her family while they packed. The family arrived around noon that Saturday, and Martinez was already there because he had shown up a little bit earlier to serve a restraining order for Ignacita against Abeda. But when he realized that Abeda wasn't at home when he got there, he went next door to deliver the order to Abeda's mother. But she had declined taking the restraining order because she said that it was not prepared correctly. Once Ignacita and her moving party arrived, Martinez gave them the go-ahead to cut the gate with wire cutters since Abeda had locked it that morning, like I had said earlier. Once they were on the property, Martinez told them that they were okay to enter the residence and begin packing. A state police officer, Glenn Huber, also stopped by the residence to assist in supervising the move, but after seeing that everything was under control, he left the scene. When the family began packing up Ignacita's things in the U-Haul, Mrs. Abeda and Dora, Abeda's sister, stood by the gate to make sure that they were not taking any of Abeda's property. When Martinez noticed this, he walked over to the mother and daughter and handed the restraining order over to Dora and Mrs. Abeda, again, assuring them that it was valid. And with that, the family continued to pack, and Dora and Mrs. Abeda waited outside. And at one point, they even grabbed a quilt that had fallen on the ground that they say had belonged to Abeda. Unfortunately, Martinez did have to leave shortly after the packing began to investigate a tip that he had received on a stolen car nearby. At first, things were going seamlessly, even without the police supervision of the property while they were packing, but not too much later, Abeda rapidly arrived at the residence with a rifle and a revolver and began to get into an altercation with Eloy, who was outside loading the U-Haul with Macario. Eloy and Macario were beginning to get out of the U-Haul when they noticed Abeda quickly approaching the residence, carrying his rifle and revolver, and then opened-fired on the two while yelling, "Con esto pagan," which means, "With this I pay you back." Also, I sincerely apologize. I do not speak Spanish, so I'm trying my best with pronunciations, but hang in there. Abeda then shot Eloy through the shoulder and then shot Macario through the back while he was standing in the rear of the U-Haul. When the family inside heard the shots, Mary Ellen screamed, grabbed her 6-month-old son, Justin, and ran outside to flee the scene. While they were running away, Abeda shot them both in the back of the head and killed them. Although it isn't clear as to if they were killed by the same or different bullets. While Abeda states that he didn't shoot Mary Ellen and Justin, the only 2 people who could have had a weapon when they were killed were Abeda and Eloy. Abeda claimed that Eloy had a gun and had fired at him, but the weapon was never presented into evidence, nor were there any shell casings from a weapon other than those from Abeda's firearms or police officers' guns. Selena and Nikki managed to escape any injury by fleeing out of a window when they heard the initial shots. After killing Mary Ellen, Justin, and Macario, and wounding Eloy, Abeda entered the house and yelled at Ignacita, Cheryl, and Selena that they were going to pay. Cheryl was kneeling on the kitchen floor when Abeda shot her in the back of the head. He then went on to kill Ignacita, first hitting her finger and then fatally shooting her in the face. The autopsy report also stated that Ignacita seemed to have been hit twice in the back of the head with a blunt object, like the butt of a gun. After shooting Cheryl and Ignacita, Abeda exited the house and shot Eloy again after noticing he was still alive. This time, Eloy was hit in the groin, but he still didn't die. After hearing the gunshots, Martinez arrived back at the residence. As Abeda was leaving the house, he encountered Martinez and shot him twice in the head at close range while he stood by his patrol car. After hearing about the shooting, Huber also returned to the scene. By the time he had arrived, Abeda had already made it to his mother's house up the hill, reminder they were neighbors. Huber got out of his patrol car and grabbed his radio, but Abeda shot him in the head while he still had 1 foot in the car from 200 yards away. After shooting and killing Huber, he fled into the hills behind his mother's home. When backup arrived, Elo ran to the first officer that arrived at the scene, Chris Valdez. Chris grabbed a sleeping bag that he had in his vehicle and wrapped Eloy up as he was freezing and had a gunshot wound to the chest. After helping Eloy, Valdez began yelling to Huber, asking him where to go and if Abeda was still in the house. This is when Eloy told the officer that Martinez and Huber had been shot. Glenn Huber was born in Boulder, Colorado, and grew up in both Roswell and Santa Fe, New Mexico. He graduated from Santa Fe High School in 1973, and then from the New Mexico Military Institute in 1975. He then went on to New Mexico State University, where he graduated in 1977. Huber served in the U.S. Army and was honorably discharged as a first lieutenant. He decided to continue his public service and took a job with the New Mexico State Police in 1981 and then resigned in 1986 to serve as the town marshal of Pecos, New Mexico. After he was done serving as the town marshal, he returned to police work in 1988 for the New Mexico State Police. He's the father of 2 daughters and 2 stepdaughters, and at the time of his death, he was a senior patrolman. He was buried at the National Cemetery in Santa Fe with full military and police honors, and his funeral procession was 10 miles long. In 2018, the Espanola State Police Office was dedicated to Huber, bearing his name. Jerry Martinez was born in Chimayo, New Mexico, and graduated from Espanola High School. He then went on to study criminology at both San Francisco Community College and the College of Santa Fe. He was a paratrooper in the U.S. Army and planned to run for the Rio Arriba County Sheriff in 1992. He is the father of 2 children, Nick and Destiny, who were only 5 years old and 2 weeks old when he was murdered. In 2015, Martinez was honored by the Sheriff's Department. They retired his badge and dedicated the Sheriff's Office building in his honor. And now, a sticker with Martinez's name and badge is also placed on the left side of all of the department's vehicles. Not long after, around 30 officers surrounded the house, believing that Abeda was still inside. But after several hours and no signs of Abeda in the residence, the officers stormed the house, which is when they found the bodies of Cheryl and Ignacita. This led to a massive manhunt of the wooded area near the homes, both on foot and by helicopter, but to no avail. During this hunt, they did find Abeda's truck abandoned near Chimayo. As stated earlier, Abeda was known as a great hunter. He was also known as an incredible sharpshooter, with people in town saying that he could knock the bell off of a goat from 10 yards. As the manhunt progressed, officers had made it to a bluff that overlooked the scene, where they found 6 cigarette butts that matched the brand that Abeda was known to smoke. It was as if he was sitting there, watching the police swarm his home. To the surprise of everyone following the case, Abeda arrived at the police station in Albuquerque just 24 hours after the massacre. He was accompanied by his cousin, Manuel Sanchez, who claims that Abeda arrived at his home in Bernalillo, New Mexico, which is a town near Albuquerque, and told him that he wanted to surrender and turn himself in. He told the officers who took him into custody that he feared if he continued to flee, he wouldn't be taken alive by police if he were to be found. He then requested that he not be hurt and not be handcuffed. The officer assured him that he was not going to hurt him, but he was absolutely going to handcuff him. Now, Abeda's recount of the day is different from what I have said thus far and was found by the investigators. So, this next part is what he testified happened that day. Abeda returned in the late afternoon after working all day in Santa Fe. He drove home on a back road, and when he got home, he parked at his mother's house up the hill, so he didn't notice that Ignacia was packing her things into the U-Haul. He took paint that he had purchased earlier in the day down the hill to his garage, which is when he noticed the moving operation that was occurring. After he brought the paint to the garage, he grabbed his rifle and revolver that he also had in the garage in order to bring them to his mom's house because he was afraid that Ignacia would steal them while packing everything up in the garage. He put the revolver in his back waistband and grabbed the rifle by the sling. While he was on his way to his mother's house, he noticed that some of his clothes were being brought to the U-Haul, so he went to the house to tell them to not take his things. When he got to the bottom of the U-Haul steps, Eloy attacked him with a knife and a .170. During the fight, Abeda cut his hand twice, but managed to get Eloy to drop the knife. During the scuffle, Macario was in the back of the U-Haul, and when Abeda looked in, he noticed more of his belongings being packed up. He asked Macario what was going on, to which Macario said that he didn't know, but not to try and stop them, because if he did, he wouldn't see tomorrow. Abeda then noticed that Eloy had a gun that had been retrieved from the cab of the U-Haul, and when he noticed, he lunged to the side and shot his gun, not knowing if it hit anything or not. He then placed another round into his rifle and put it on the porch railing. While he was doing this, he got hit in the back of the head, which caused him to fall, and the rifle to fall off the railing. Abeda then grabbed the gun, which caused the gun to discharge. He continued to fumble with the gun, which caused it to reload with another round in the chamber. Which, I don't know if you know anything about guns, seems implausible, but going on. While this happened, Abeda felt someone grab the revolver that he had in his back waistband, which caused him to turn around to see who it was that hit him, and was then attempting to take his gun. As he was turning, he noticed someone with a baby. He was hit in the head again, which caused the rifle to discharge while falling from his hands and landed at the bottom of the steps, where he then left it. Abeda finally got up from the group and walked into the house to see who had hit him. This is when he ran into Cheryl, who was in the kitchen. He sensed that something was wrong, so he grabbed Cheryl and spun her around so that she was in front of him like a human shield. Cheryl was yelling at Abeda to stop, and this is when he noticed that Ignacia had his revolver pointed at them. Cheryl told Ignacia to stop and covered her face, bending over, which caused both her and Abeda to fall to the ground. Ignacia fired the revolver, attempting to hit Abeda, but it hit Cheryl instead. Abeda then struggled with Ignacia over the gun, and during the fight, Ignacia fired the gun, but her finger was in the way, which caused her to shoot off the tip of her pinky finger. Again, kind of seems implausible, but okay. Ignacia then made a run for the door with the gun, but Abeda caught up to her. Ignacia bent down and pointed the gun at Abeda, but he hit the barrel, which caused it to point back towards her, and during this, the gun discharged and shot her in the face. He then fled the house and shot Eloy a second time, and based on this story, Abeda claimed imperfect self-defense. So that's Abeda's recount of what happened that day. So, based on the claim, the court argued that Abeda could not claim imperfect self-defense for the killing of Deputy Martinez or Officer Huber, as the evidence indicated that Abeda aimed at and shot both men. But Abeda continued to argue imperfect self-defense in both of these cases as well. With both accounts of what happened presented, it was obvious that Ignacia was legally removing her possessions from Abeda's house with the help of her family. While Abeda was not aware that Ignacia had obtained a restraining order against him, since it was delivered to his mother that morning and not him, he was aware that Ignacia had the right to remove her things from the property. He also claims that he was not aware that she had gained access to his property with the help and authority of the deputy sheriff. When Abeyta went to trial, he requested that the jury would be instructed on voluntary manslaughter in the deaths of Macario, Cheryl, and Mary Ellen, as he argued that Macario was a bystander that was killed during his scuffle with Eloy, and that Cheryl and Mary Ellen were killed because he was defending his property. The jury rejected the theory of imperfect self-defense and convicted him of first-degree murder in Cheryl and Mary Ellen's death and second-degree murder in Macario's death. Abeyta was acquitted of 2 counts of attempted murder against Eloy, and this caused Abeyta to argue that the need for self-defense that was used against Eloy was then transferred to Macario since they were working together, and that Macario was verbally threatening him, which was adequate for provocation of self-defense. The court declined the idea that Macario's verbal threat was enough for him to be killed in self-defense. The jury deliberated on Abeyta's case for 11 days, and he was ultimately sentenced to 147 years in prison, which he is still serving at the state prison in Amarillo, Texas. Now, that is the end of this case. I know it's a little bit shorter than normal, so I apologize for that, but I hope you enjoyed it. This case was very interesting. I had never heard of it before I started kind of looking into cases in New Mexico, and there has actually been quite a few crimes and murders in Chimayo in the last 20 years, so if that's something you're interested, go and take a look into that as well. That was something I found interesting while I was looking into this. But as always, please give me 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm always looking for cases to cover again, so if you have a case suggestion, please visit the link in the show's Instagram page at Crime on the Clarkfork. I also post pictures from the cases I cover on that Instagram page, so go give that a quick follow and let me know what your thoughts are on the case in the comments on Instagram. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will catch you next time with more big crime in small places.